What's up, dudes? Wait, the universe, your master geeky and nerdy, and welcome to a new episode. Now, if you're probably a subscriber of my channel, you would know that we've talked about / reviewed. I gave my honest thoughts and opinions on Studio Ghibli Princess Mononoke. You'll know that I hated it like all hell. But if you stuck around in that video, you've heard of some other Studio Ghibli films that I actually do like and appreciate. My Neighbor Totoro, Spirited Away, Ponyo, Kiki Delivery Service, and the topic of today, Howl's Moving Castle. Now, yes, of course, I got this at the same time that I got Princess Mononoke, but this is better. This is better. So, it is in a sort of like magical world, sort of like Spirited Away, kind of was. Like, for the most part, Spirited Away, it was not like in traditional Japan. It was in this magical little, like own world / city area, kind of is in Spirited Away. So in this world, there is a moving castle with a famous wizard / magician / spellcaster named Howl, who is voiced by Christian Bale. Now, Howl's been around for probably some time. A lot of people know him. A lot of people go to him, and it's almost like an anime version of Doctor Strange, but a really good version of anime Doctor Strange. Like when you open up a door, it reminded me of Doctor Strange, how he can open up different doorways and then he be in like another place. Also, kind of reminds me of John Constantine, how John Constantine has I forget what it's called, a house of something, and it always moves from another location to the next. So it is very referencing like the superhero type of deal stuff. So this story stars a quiet hat girl named Sophie, or Sophia. Basically, she lives with her mother. She has an older sister, and not really. I mean, I don't think that she has a mother. I think her mother passed away. No, she does have a mother. She has an older sister, but they don't care about her, and they don't care about this hat shop that she still keeps. Her older sister is out doing things and doing her own adventuring, and her mother sort of like is like living the like basically Hollywood high life, and she's like, oh well. And then she kind of like tried to come back into her life like later on. So Sophie gets into a hat shop, but just as she is closing the door, and she tells her, well, guess what? Cursed. And so she turns her into an older woman. And this is not just like your typical older woman. She's an old woman with a lot of sass. And she put the curse on her for good reasons that I'm going to try to theorize later on. So the next day, she's like, I have to get out of the house. I got to get out of here. I can't let anyone see me. Her older sister goes to check on her. And she says that she has a cold, but she said, I got to get out of here. And I got to go try to find help somewhere. Because I can't live here if I look like an old woman. So she is trying to escape out and away, and that's when she is found by Howl, who does give her some assistance into his life, and does kind of bring her to where his castle is. Not at first, but, he just talks to her, he saves her from, I forget what it was. It does his little, like, almost sort of like Diablo Jumbe, or air walking technique that Sanji does. So he's like walking in the air, and I'm like, cute little nod to his One Piece there. I see what you're doing, movie. So she does end up noticing the castle, and that's when she's like, maybe I can go see Howl. Maybe Howl can help me do this. And she asks a lot of people like where Howl is, and a lot of people are like, I don't know, wherever that he showed up, apparently. Basically, but he hides his business to avoid basically having a lot of people being well introspective with his business and everything. So she goes to his castle where she meets a walking, basically scarecrow character that becomes very relevant later on. But he is also cursed by the same witch as well. So, he's just hopping along with her towards the castle. He helps her get on the castle, and she gets in, and that's when she meets one of the young apprentices of Howl himself. And also, she made Billy Crystal, who voices Callisto, who is a talking magical flame and keeps the castle basically alive. The whole entire journey is essentially, to my opinion, it's not about like Howl saving himself, which he is. You learn a lot about Howl that you never really expected to learn about this magician character. You learn about where he came from, how he got his magical abilities, and how he is capable of doing everything, and why he is at the point that he is at right now. Like, you learn all that rather at a very good pace instead of it being just jammed right down your throat, and they expect you to learn as you go. That's one thing that I do love about this, which is also something that is relevant in other Studio Ghibli films. You learn as the story goes what happened to the characters before and how they are here now, so to speak. So, she ends up living in a castle. She ends up doing a lot of help towards them. And she also realizes how Howl and the witch that put the curse on her basically are kind of connected in how it works out that way. She was Howl's girlfriend, and she was very beautiful at one point in Howl's life, but then like he accidentally put a curse or a spell on her, which turns her into this ugly sort of persona. Um, and and he is at the point of like I can't be around her no more because of the depression and whatnot. And I'm like, that's clever. That's a clever way of handling something like that. Like he won't go around people now. He's kind of a loner. He won't associate himself with other people. Like he just wants to be left alone, so to speak. And they do show like the basically symptoms of basically depression and heartbreak and breaking up and whatnot very well, but in a good perspective that is not very dark or foreboding. Like there was a moment where Howl becomes like a disgusting sort of swamp creature, and he starts turning into like basically like Swamp Thing, but he starts deteriorating around until he gets a bath. Um, which is honestly very funny. And there's another moment where he becomes very depressed and he summons these shadow demons out of the walls and whatnot, and they have to calm him down before he basically destroys the castle. Because essentially, Howl is the castle. They end up saying later on that basically the entire castle that Howl built is essentially his heart, and if the castle goes, Howl goes along with it. Nice little, thing to say about it, that basically this is his life, and if he loses this, he is no longer living. There was honestly a funny moment in this where Sophie does something in his bathroom after cleaning it, trying to keep everything organized, because she's sick of looking at a dirty place, and she ends up switching like his shampoo bottle with like something else like hair dye, and his hair turns blonde, and he's like, "Look what you've done to my beautiful hair!" And she's like, "Oh, sorry, I couldn't stand looking at it. It was such a mess," and goes out on a rampage, essentially. And if you like Doctor Strange, which I can guarantee a lot of people do, this is very, very Doctor Strange. Like how we'll go to this basically version of Dormammu's realm where he faces off against like these dragon crow things that are trying to basically, in a sense, destroy the world. And Howl had different magical powers that he can use. Like you see him change forms, he can turn into a crow, he can turn his image into whatever that he wants. Um, so it's very much reminiscent of Doctor Strange, and as a dude who really does actually love, Doctor Strange and a lot of like the other magical users in like DC and Marvel both. I was like, this is interesting, um, so to speak. And they actually reference like a lot of people that he worked with. He worked with like the Queen of England. He worked for this person. He worked for that person. So he's a very well known figure in this sort of like line, so to speak. So, you know, they do end up saving everybody. They do end up saving the day and whatnot. And honestly, the voice actors and voice actresses in this are sort of the best performances. Let me read off some of them to you. You have Gene Simmons, and no, not from Kiss, Gene Simmons. You have Christian Bale, Lauren Bacall, Blythe Danner, Emily Mortimer, Josh Hutcherson, yes, Josh Hutcherson, who voices the little apprentice of Howl, and Billy Crystal, as I said, is Crystal, and basically he does a great job. The music sounds very almost Fantasia-like, almost very Disney-like, but that's not a bad thing. I mean, it fits for this movie where you have basically magical elements and almost just like sort of Fantasia like references, setting, so to speak. So technically, having music that sounds a lot like Fantasia is not exactly something that is very wrong in this setting. But towards the end, but basically at the end of it, Howl and Sophie return back to normal. Everything returns back to normal. Howl falls in love with Sophie, and this brings up also the curse of that Sophie has, and which is the thing that I'm probably going to spend a lot of time talking about more so than the movie itself. The animation, by the way, is beautiful. The voice acting is flawless. The music is great. Everything just blends together so well, like a perfect recipe. Um, so now here comes my theory, which is probably going to be very long, about what this curse is and how it affects Sophie, essentially, and how Sophie managed to break the curse. So there is a moment I think early on in the film where her sister talks about that basically she is at coming of age where she can like she is of that age, words speak, where she can basically date someone, and she's like, no, that's okay, I don't really feel like it. And her sister's like, you are crazy for not falling in love. And you know, falling in love to me means meeting that right person. You can't just rush blindly into it without noticing what's in front of you first, you know, because that's how you get hurt. 8 times at it, a lot more than you expect to. So, you know, so, you know, in this, after she is cursed, I can't remember the name of the witch, and also the witch gets kind of her comeuppance later on in this. Um, but and essentially the witch, the older, the ex girlfriend of Howl, basically turned into an old woman too. And I think what this curse is almost like a love curse. But let me explain. What I mean by that is like this is a curse that you are endowed on and that you get. But you have to fall in love with that right person. Once you fall in love with that right person, you revert back to normal. And that's why Sophie had the curse. But there are at times, especially in the film that you notice, where she will be an old woman, and then she'll be back to her. I think she's like 10 or 8 or 15 years old. I don't think it says on here. No, but she's like a young woman, so to speak. So, but you know, like there are at times where she basically kind of like feels for Howell. She has emotional changes for him, kind of sees who he is, and that kind of reverses her aging back to her normal age. Um, and then at the end of this, when she actually really does fall in love with Howell, the curse is broken and she is turned back into a normal young woman again. So essentially, this is sort of like a love coach, and it's sort of like told in the best way. Where it's like if you fall in love with somebody, you know, in a way, it's sort of like the heart becomes younger, and it notices that person a lot more than someone else. I'm not trying to word it meanly, is what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say like if you notice, you know, somebody, your heart will basically notice them more. You'll feel younger. You'll feel more at edge with things, and basically, you kind of feel like you are a child again. And I think that's what um, Hayao Miyazaki was trying to get across in this film was his representation and his meaning of love, which I honestly, you know, sort of got slash acquired from this film. And then when the witch fell out of love, the ex girlfriend, I can't remember her name, of how she becomes an old woman. And in that sort of a sense, she lost her love. She'll never find love, essentially not right now. But at the same time, she's happy and content with being this person who she is, which can also reference single people who are happy with life just the way that they have them. But I just want to tell one story before I go with this, and also with me. So when I met my girlfriend, who had been with me for, she's like, oh crap, he's thinking. Like, oh, yes. Like when I've been with my girl for 5 years now, um, I think. God damn it, I'm dead. I am so dead right now. Yes, 5 years. You know, me and her, in an essential, when I first met her, this was sort of like my change as well. You know, we've been together for 5 years, and essentially, even still now, like when I talk to her and get into conversations with her and everything, just listening to her voice, and this might be like romanticism, so shut up. Um, when I listen to her voice, when I hear her laugh, when I hear her just talk, it makes me feel young again. And especially when I met her, um, because I went through a very bad breakup slash also kind of abuse before I met her, and essentially I sort of became like this old person. Like I would stop talking to people. I kind of ignored people. I wouldn't really stay around people, for very long. And so I kind of became like an older version of myself, an older man, so to speak. And then that night when I met her, I was like, my heart grew fonder. I kind of grew younger in a sense, and I was like, this is it. I'm like, this is happiness in a sense for me. And even till to this day, I can still say I'm content and very happy with where I am. You know, and I'm not gonna say that we're like the Prince Charming slash Snow White sort of variation where we are basically never ending story of love and happiness. Like, no, we had some arguments in our past, but are we still together because of that? Hell to the yes. And even I asked her, and a lot of people are going to think this is cute because I wasn't insecure. I just wanted to hear, like, her own response to it. And I just wanted to hear it. Also because I was, in a sense, I was kind of bored. I was like, do you still. I basically said it, but in a nice way. I said, "Do you still want to be with me?" With a little question mark, but I said it in a nicer, cuter way. And she goes, in her own way, and I didn't take it as mean. When she goes, "What do you think?" and I'm like, "I see what you did there," like very, very unique, and everything. So take it from me, people, because it took me years before I met this lovely, gorgeous woman. Take it from me. You may be stuck in a rut for years, but as this film will tell you, you can do it. It may take a long time, but eventually, well, in the word of Snow White, for men out there, someday my prince will come. And for the women for the women out there, or men, your preferences. And for the basically for the other version, it will be someday my princess will come. So essentially, you will find your own love out there. If you haven't seen Howl Moving Castle, I highly recommend it. I mean, even for an early 2000, 2004, really wow. Even for a 2004 film, this still looks like it came out within this year relatively. The animation is fluent. I think there is some use of CGI in this, but it's not bad put into this film. And the voice acting is famous quality, and the music is just damn good. So if you haven't seen Howl's Moving Castle, I highly recommend that you do. So thank you guys so much for watching this, and this is Radio Universe saying, remember, you might see a man in a moving castle, but always remember, she might eventually summon shadow demons upon you. And until next time.